That was so good.
It really does read like poetry.
It does.
I feel like I'm being told this like beautiful and ominous story that just
It's just no. It like legit. Like this is one of those stories that is meant to be read out loud.
Yeah.
Like and you did it so eloquently and so beautifully. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, so firstly, like we've said, your story is so clearly and distinctly different from anything we've ever had on the podcast before. There are times when it feels like you're speaking to the audience as though it was a real conversation with them, like with repetition and with like explanation, and you mix it with these poetic vignettes of memories that you are remembering yourself, and it feels like you're just talking to like you, and you're just expressing it for you. And it feels like a mix of like a journal and a letter to someone else and a telephone call with the entire audience. And it's just like, it encompasses like everything. And watching it is just like, it's beautiful. So why the choice to communicate this story in this special way?
So the story essentially is all about the undocumented experience. And I feel like to talk about the undocumented experience, it was really important for me to connect heartbreak to it. Because that's what I feel like living in America for so long is just kind of like, brokenhearted for a long time. So I just pieced in, my, experience with heartbreak, but then it's also about loss. And, my sister passed, and I also pieced in not just my story, but also her story. She was also undocumented. So it had to be fragmented like that, because I feel like, I think in all aspects of my life, whether I was working or whether I was in a relationship, whatever I was doing, whether it be in school or whatever, that undocumented, that stigma of not being legal, like plagued me in every area. So I had to find a way for the story to go through memory, go through time, go through experiences.
Yeah. There was a moment in which you talk about slavery, actually, and you talk about how it comes down to taking away somebody's identity. And it's so funny that you mentioned this heartbreak. Can you like talk about how the undocumented experience also ties into that concept
of heartbreak,
but also slavery in a way, as well as a loss of identity?
So I think too, I came here and I have sisters who were born here. And they identify a lot with being Jamaican. Like, they talk better Jamaican than I do. But when I came here, I didn't know right away that I was, undocumented. But when I found out, I kind of like made a decision. Like, I can't go back to Jamaica. So I kind of have to make up my mind and figure out how to like merge and just make this life, my life, which I was already doing, because, I went to school, elementary school here. But in doing that, I found that I was never like American enough. I was like the Jamaican girl or the black girl, or, but I wasn't like, I just didn't feel like I belonged. But then when, I was around like Jamaicans, I didn't feel Jamaican either. So I felt like my identity was just all messed up. And then at the same time, I couldn't go anywhere else. I couldn't travel. I couldn't experience much else. So I felt really stuck. I felt like in shackles. And the big thing about like slavery, like you feel like you can't, move or breathe. Yeah. So I think.
Wow. I think you definitely did a great job of capturing that emotion as well.
It all connects. Like you can't, there's no way, especially like speaking from my personal experience, I know it's very different from yours. I'm an immigrant as well. And I am also going through this thing right now with my immigration status where things are very rocky. And I definitely know that feeling of like, I love America. America is mine. And at the same time, America doesn't like me. Right. And at the same time, America, like the boy that you or the man that you mentioned in your story, kind of likes other people better. and kind of like and kind of like is almost like, oh, I believe that America, like exactly like you say in your piece, it's like believing that America is for you. America loves you too. America will take care of you.
Right.
And then realizing that, oh, I was a fool.
Right.
Like to believe that is kind of foolish in a way.
I think too, there's a part in it where I feel like I'm going, or not a part in it, but what really happened is I felt like I was kind of like spiraling out of control and just like very much like, you know, like, oh my gosh, immigration is, you know, trying to get me. And this was all some time ago, but I couldn't imagine living in the current political climate and being undocumented. I don't know what I would do. So I don't know, you know, even saying that, I feel for you. Like I literally can't imagine. I don't know what I would do if my status wasn't okay. But with the boy, when this was a teenage relationship that broke my heart. It was, I think what was really magnificent with his like playing with my heart. It wasn't that he was playing with my heart, but you just was like, you believe this fantasy or you believe this thing, and it felt real, it looked real, it sounded real. So then, you know, it has to be real. And there's this thing about America, it feels real, you're around it, and you know, but it's not, you know, there's something about it that's just not.
Yeah, and that actually that really sticks with me, because you bring up this topic of dreams a lot. Actually your piece starts with a prophetic dream that it's like you thought, like, and it goes against what you just said. It was like you thought that it wasn't real. And that kind of just sets up the whole piece for like your disillusionment as well. So like, what do you think, starting this piece off with that prophetic dream, how do you think that affected that disillusionment of the American dream as well? How does that play along?
So I think even in the dream, it's like, it's very desolate, right? I'm walking by myself in this dream. And I see like these figures, it plays in because it's not a dream, it's a nightmare, you know? And that's what it is. Like, you know, we think a lot that there's this dream, and you hear everyone talk about this American dream, but you know, it's not really a dream or just a dream. It's scarier than we think it is. It's deeper. There's so many more layers to it. So I don't know. This specific dream is a nightmare.
Wow.
It's just very well made, intertying all of these things and all of this like loss where you thought there would never be loss. So there is this boy, and there is of course your sister, and then there is America as an identity, and never thinking those things can go away. And then realizing that sometimes the dreams that come true, like work hard, pray hard, and your dreams will come true. Sometimes the dreams that come true are the worst ones. And that's kind of what this is about, is the breaking of that archetype of the dream.
Right.
Like, I don't, there's never like, I don't think I can go a month of my life of actually having physical dreams and then one of them not being bad, you know? So it's like, why do we think of these things, these like happenings of our mind as only good, you know? And you touch upon all of those things really, really, really beautifully.
Because you mentioned how you felt kind of these intense emotions around, especially like with the undocumented stuff. There was a moment in the piece where you're like waiting tables. And you set it up with like, you're asking yourself, is this all in my head? It starts with like this inner turmoil. It's very internal. And then it leads into this external type of like, oh my God, like what is going on here? So I think, can you, and again, you caught the intensity of that moment so brilliantly. I want you to elaborate a little bit more about what was going on during that time, and how do you think that relates nowadays with people who are experiencing these, you know, intense emotions in this social climate?
So I feel like waitressing was a really good job for me, because if not, I'm like naturally, you know, shy, reserved, private kind of. And what waitressing does, it forces you to, you know, go out, talk, and you kind of have to, like, you know, perform. So this, what it was that I would go waitress and perform, and then afterwards be going through like whatever real thing that was happening in my life, and felt like my world was falling apart, and then get up for the shift and then have to like put it all together and smile and, you know, make sure everything was like, you know, act like everything was okay when they weren't okay. You know, when I was feeling like so much anxiety at times, I was like hyperventilating in the bathroom, you know, over this thing, these papers, obsessed with these papers, is like literally though obsessed with it in every aspect of my life since I was a kid. So I set it up that way because it just really, I think it just like happened because a lot of this was like, it was very much different, part types of writing, but it just like naturally flowed that way, you know, in reference to, you know, people who are like dealing with this stuff now. Like I said, you know, if I was, and this was, I can't remember what year, you know, I was going through all of this. I was, I don't know, maybe 22. But I couldn't imagine if I was freaking out when, you know, everything's okay. I can't imagine, you know, what people are going through now and how I would be now. I don't know. Really don't.
I don't even know what to say. I'm just like looking at quotes right now and I'm just taking them all in. And that
there were so many really good quotes.
Yeah. And what specifically gets me is it's about so much more than a boy. But relating it back to something like that is just so like relatable and so interesting. And even people that don't know what it's like to, you know, be fearful when it seems to everyone else that
but everyone knows how it feels to be in love, right? You know how it is to be in love or to be in love with this person or this thing that you think is, you know. And I think too, a big part of like being in love is like when you really trust a person, you all of a sudden start giving your all, right? You start just being vulnerable. And that's where the real heartbreak, like even beyond just the heartbreak, but that's where it really gets to you, you know, when you're vulnerable and you really like give yourself, and then it's like, no, you're not enough, you know, that's what it comes to. But I think to the story, it's about all this stuff, but what I really tried to get to the end was like, you know, it's also a way for me to like stay motivated, you know, also about like staying like, you know, continue believing in myself, even though all this stuff is going on, you know, you're hurting and you're lost and all types of stuff and your heart is breaking or broken. You have to remember, you know, who you are. I think living here or going through all this undocumented experience, you forget it's all about like, you know, where do you come from? You're not from here and all this stuff, but it's like, who are you? You know?
Yeah.
That actually echoes in one of the quotes that really, really stood out to me. You asked the question, does color divide or does nationalism? And it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
Because it's so much, like you said, like this stuff goes so much deeper than just like the color of your skin, or just, especially for what you're talking about for the undocumented experience and how that comes back to slavery and identity. It's like, what is this identity? What does it mean to be American? You know, I don't know.
And especially your treatment, like you felt like it was like a target on your back, or you felt like you had the words immigrant on your forehead, and you felt it, and especially in the way that people like treat people. Couldn't necessarily, like the woman in the coffee shop couldn't necessarily see you as an immigrant necessarily, but she could see you for the color of your skin and that made her almost feel inclined to treat you so differently, and to, I think she even, and
you get that a lot though when you're waitressing. It's like every day. That's just a product, I guess, of waitressing, like customers and even working managers, and you know, I feel like you get that. That's a whole thing in itself too. You just.
I was wondering if she had any link to, like, the choice to include her, if that was linked to also when you mentioned, I didn't write it, I just wrote Becky with the good hair. But the what you wrote about the, as I write, I feel free. What makes you love her more than me?
Oh,
is it her
this
hair?
This is talking about the relationship, relationship. Oh, so that's separate from waitress, and that was. Okay, so because it spanned over time, a lot of what I talked about before was just like how I felt throughout the relationship. But so like that the guy that I was with, he was like, you know, I don't know how to explain. I don't want to like say, like, talk too much about it like it matters anymore. But anyway, he ended up being with someone who was, you know, like obviously like lighter skin or longer hair. And then, so then I'd wonder about, and this person is also Black. So it's not really, race thing, but maybe like a colorism thing, if you know, but I think it's not about her, not about him, but it's about like me. So me trying to figure out what was wrong with me. Like, why didn't you choose me? Like, you know, why am I not good enough, America? Why am I not good enough to this, you know, to this guy? So I think that's really what that's about.
That's what I was getting to, is that it felt.
Then even when she, like the restaurant person asked me, like, what's wrong? Like, what's wrong with you?
Right. I think with all this being said, like, what I'm really curious to know is because, you know, sitting here talking to you, just like sitting across from you, like, you seem like you have things pretty figured out. like and just being able to like
aren't we all?
No, but you definitely you give off this aura of like, you know, you've come a long way from the emotions that are linked to this. So I think what our audience really would like to know is, how'd you like dig yourself from this place? Like, how'd you dig yourself out? Like, how are you you know, able to even talk about these things, you know?
What would you want listeners or readers to take away from this, from your story?
I haven't digged myself out. I am the only way to get through this and any of this, you know, any part of this, because there's so much more. I feel like there's so much more to be said that needs to be said. But the only way is to say it, because if I don't say it, it's like I'm gonna drown in it, you know. So saying it, writing it is one thing, but you know, I'm happy that I even found out about this podcast and was able to be on this podcast, because it's like I have another opportunity to say it. When I say it out loud, it takes on another life of its own. So
definitely
I can remove somehow, you know, it brings healing. So it's therapy. That's what it is.
Wow. Taking out a tumor.
Yeah.
Wow.
So with that, we're gonna wrap up now. So thank you for for sharing this story with us. For like, it's like so many pieces of you that are just in this, and speaking so many truths too, not truths that aren't like just true to you, but truths that are true to so many people.
Speaks so many.
Yeah,
like,
it speaks
so
volumes.
Thank you for giving me a place to share. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.